She cuts like a knife. Here's your look at the new Diamond Select Marvel Select Psylocke Deluxe Collector's Figure. Betsy Braddock is Psylocke, the telepathic X-Men member who found her psyche transplanted into the body of a deadly ninja assassin after a trip through the Siege Perilous. Now able to focus her considerable mental energy into a psychic knife, Psylocke uses her telepathic powers in conjunction with her martial arts abilities to protect mutant and human alike. This 7-inch scale action figure of Psylocke features 16 points of articulation and includes interchangeable parts and a Danger Room display base, combined with other Danger Room sections from other Marvel Select X-Men figures to build a larger diorama. The Psylocke figure was sculpted by Gentle Giant Studios. So, we're going to go ahead and get the measurements going for the new Psylocke, and taking it right to the very top of her head, just like that. It's as easy as that, really. You're looking at the figure of Psylocke standing 7.3 inches in height. Not bad at all. Switching out over to centimeters, you're looking at the figure standing 18.6 centimeters tall. We'll go ahead and look at the diorama piece now. If you have been collecting the diorama pieces for the Danger Room for each of the various Diamond Select, Marvel Select X-Men figures, then you probably can add this on. It's nice in the sense that it has the slotted sections, in which, again, you would just attach the wall facings to that, and then you would just simply line these up to the other diorama displays that you have in your collection. So that's pretty cool. Fixed atop, and well, it's not so much a fixed, you just, when you get this out of the packaging, let me just wiggle this off right here, you get this section right here. It kind of looks like the Murang Zhang, I think it's pronounced, or the Mook Yang Zhong, which is like those old sparring wooden dummies that they would use in China for like kung fu and stuff like that. It just certainly does not look like it's made out of wood. Instead, the Murang Zhang looks like it's more kind of like cybernetic, kind of robotic, and certainly made of steel and not wood. To attach it, you're just going to take the hole here and line up to the peg point there, and just attach it like so. Obviously, this part of it is going to stick out a little bit, so you could probably just move it around a little bit until you get the desired look that you want. The thing about these display stands is that they actually don't have pegs here anywhere, which I guess is good because it doesn't localize the character specifically, like it has to be right there. If you want to move Psylocke over, you can have her a little bit further back. I like that they, of course, kept the color scheme consistent with the other diorama pieces. You've got this nice kind of pearl-esque blue color, and then you've got this kind of off-white. It's not quite pearl, it's not quite silver, it's kind of a little something in between, and that stays pretty consistent with all the other diorama pieces that we've looked at for the X-Men figures. Love the bold black panel lining. It just really does look like something you would have saw from the comics, or certainly from the original 90s X-Men cartoon, so I really like the fact that she does include that. Just quickly, for some size comparisons, one of the previous X-Men Marvel Select figures that we had a look at was Rogue. Psylocke is a little bit taller than Rogue, which I guess is fitting enough because generally in the comics she is a little bit taller as well. She is one of the more taller female characters and members of the X-Men team. A couple of little size comparisons there. My other X-Men figures, I've kept all the X-Men figures from Diamond Select that I have been producing. I really want to get these, starting to get these out and on display, especially for the fact that we've looked at these neat diorama pieces for a much larger scaled diorama. My dream really is now to go into storage, find those other figures, and get all those diorama pieces together where we could have a much larger diorama representation of the Danger Room, and then you could have the various X-Men figures battling inside. The figure surprisingly gets a fair bit going with her, accessory-wise at least. Let's have a look at those have a look at those right now. She does come with the katana, which actually when you do get this out of the packaging, the katana is already firmly affixed inside the sheath located on her back. Let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. As you can see, the sheath located on the back there. Very simply a case of just sliding the katana sword into that, and you can display the figure with the yellow sheath and yellow belt. I'll talk about that in a second. Also included with the figure, I guess we'll look at some of the smaller aspects of things, and we'll look at the interchangeable head in a second. She comes with a various series of interchangeable hands. The hands vary from different dynamic hands. Dynamic hands would probably be the best way to describe them, of various different configurations. She does also have a not quite gripping hand, but I guess something a little bit more suited for holding the katana. Don't worry, we'll talk about that in a second as well. And she also comes with a pair of closed fists. Now, I did do a little bit of swapsies here with this particular figure. I'd actually already taken the service of taking out one of the relaxed hands and swapping it with the partially gripping hand for holding the katana. Now, the thing about the katana, though, and I've done this with one of the hands, I'll show you how I did that in a second, is that the katana handle fits very, very tightly into the opened area here of her partially gripping hand. It does take a little bit, like I said, of finessing, a little bit of wiggling this around, and eventually she does grasp onto the handle of the katana. I have to admit, though, that the handle section is quite large, and her grip is quite small, actually. When you immediately get them out of the packaging, the fists themselves seem like they're just too small. They don't accommodate the katana immediately. So I did do a little bit of customization. I'm bringing a screwdriver, for example. Find a screwdriver that's about the same size as the handle, and then all I did was, because it's metal, I just kind of wove it through, twisted it through the hand. Just did that a couple of times, like that. I'm not really doing much damage at all, really, to it. All I'm doing is widening, opening up that canal just a little bit more so that the hand will actually support the katana. And then we can go ahead and take the handle out. Be careful of the fist, of the blade itself. You don't want to break that in the process. Just put her down for a second. And what did seem like an awfully tight fit still is a tight fit, but it's something that, whoops, if we don't drop the katana, you can still twist the hand in there. And it seems like the hand now can hold the katana blade just a little bit better than it did before, as you can see right there. The other hand that I had mentioned before, go ahead and pop that off. She does also come with, like I said, this hand here, which does hold the katana, but it holds it a little bit more loose. This would be for a good pose if you kind of want to have that kind of dynamic pose in which she's got the blade draping forward, leaning towards you, whereas the hands like this are good for having the blade standing straight up. Like I said, like this hand still holds the blade decently enough, but as you can see, it does flop around a little loose, a little too loose for my liking. So those are the interchangeable hands. I know, I didn't forget one. I did forget one. She does also have the one with the trademark Psychic blade, a really neat looking blade, something which I feel could only be pulled off successfully by Diamond Select. Marvel Select figures are really my cup of tea when it is my go-to for Marvel figures. Oftentimes, as you probably saw on this channel, I don't do a whole lot of Marvel Legends figures because they just seem so much the same after a while. The mold is just reused and reused. Diamond Select at least makes unique molds to each of their figures, and even like the interchangeable hands, for example. I feel like if that was Marvel Legends, that would simply just be an energy construct that you would just fit over the hand really loose, and it just wouldn't look as good as I think this does look here. Really like the sculpting that they've incorporated into the Psychic blade. And to change out the hand, really to change out any of the hands, simply just hold on to the forearm, wiggle that off as easy as that could be, and then just wiggle on the proper hand. Unfortunately, the Psychic blade is only on the one side, but it is what it is. It still looks quite good. And then again, you've got a freed up hand on the other side to hold the katana. So those are the accessories that she comes included with. The other thing that she also has, I don't know if you would consider this to be an accessory. I guess it would be. She has the wind-blown back hairstyle on this new face portrait. Now, getting this and looking at it initially in the packaging, and then when I was opening, I was thinking, I wonder if the butterfly psychic effect around her face is something that can be removed. Disappointed almost before I even got into it, thinking that, oh no, that's actually a neat looking head portrait. I wish that you could remove it. Well, you could actually remove it. Just take that off like so, and it completely detaches from Psylocke's face. This tab right here is really the one that does all the work. This one right over here just kind of flows off to the side. It really doesn't have much purpose. But where that little draping of hair opens up, right in there, you just take this tab and you just fit it in there like that. And it's enough to hold everything in place. The thing about it, though, is that while it's nice that you could remove it, you unfortunately almost lost it right there. You can't really fit it too much into this hairstyle. This little opening right here is just not wide enough to accommodate it, and nor does it really fit well behind her hair. It's kind of designed specifically for one way, this way right here, and then it just ends up kind of draping off to the side. So it really doesn't work too well with this head portrait, which I guess is still fine. I'm happy for the fact that at least you can remove this off if you do still want to make use of this head sculpt here, which both are spectacular looking head sculpts. Let's go ahead and take off the psychic blade. I just don't want to run the risk of actually breaking it, so I'm just going to take that off for the time being. And you know what, while we're at it, we'll just put back, I'll do the gripping hands for the time being. So having a look at Psylocke, one of my all-time favorite female X-Men figures. I believe she was part of X-Men Blue, if I'm not mistaken. Really well received by the drawings of Jim Lee. I think that was really my introductory into Psylocke. Now, the one thing about Psylocke's figure here that some people are really rather upset about is the fact that she does have the yellow sheath that we've already talked about for the katana blade, and she also has this yellow belt. It is canon in the sense that it has been showing up in some of the earlier Jim Lee X-Men comics. I believe, can't remember quite the issue, but there was an issue, a cover, for example, that actually did have, was it X-Men 6? It's probably not right. But she actually did have the sashed sheath, and then she also did have this belt right here. I like the fact that Diamond Select gives you options like this, that they thought ahead and researched the material to come up with what she would have as a look in the comics. They simply just didn't add this on after the fact. The thing about it, though, is you can't remove the belt. You can most definitely remove the sheath. That's not so much the problem. It's just a case of taking off the head like this. Just going to wiggle this off of the ball joint. Just pop that off like so. And you just want to feed the arm up like that. Couldn't be any bit easier than that. The thing about it, though, is that the belt doesn't have that same ease to remove. I'm surprised they actually didn't put a tab here, something you could detach and remove the belt altogether. Now, there is a way around it. The obvious one would be cutting the belt, but I really don't want to have to do that. I guess you could find an area around the pocket where you could make an incision, a slice all the way through the plastic. But then I don't think it would sit as well on her. Now, if you are fine just to completely dismiss the idea of her wearing a belt like this, then by all means, you just cut that, take that right off. But if it's something that you want to be able to change out frequently, maybe you decide one day you want to have her with the belt, the next day you don't. You're a very indecisive individual. What you could do is heat the torso up, pop the torso, this piece off, because it's really just attached by a dumbbell ball joint. Pop that off, and you'd be able to slide the belt off of the torso, because there is no other fixable means to this. The legs are obviously too wide, so you can't fit them down that way. And the torso, obviously, even with the arms up, just can't clear the top part of her torso. So you're sort of stuck with it unless you make the decision to either heat the torso, take that off, or just make that cut, that ill-fated cut, and take the belt off altogether. Let's just go ahead and put her head back on. Personally speaking, I think I may end up just cutting the belt as much as it's nice that it's, you know, this is a canon design for the character, I really think more so Psylocke without this, and certainly without this as well. As for her head portrait, it is stunning. I've always thought that Psylocke was a beautiful character. Her and Rogue, of all things, because I just did the comparison of those two figures, just so happen to be my two favorite of the female X-Men characters. It's always something about Psylocke I've really liked, her design. And while she really wasn't handled properly in the X-Men films, though X-Men films really didn't X-Men property well either, again, I really have always liked Psylocke with the purple flowing hair draping over generally on one side of her face. Just a stunning representation of Psylocke here. Again, you can go with really either one of the designs. I like the fact that she does have the wind-swept hair on the other head portrait. It's entirely up to you whether you would want to go with the angrier expression yourself, but at least you do have the option. You could do that if you don't want to have like that butterfly effect around here. At least you could take that off, and like I said, you could just swap that out if you want. As for the rest of her body, it is made up of the metallic, trademark metallic blue outfit that she has in the comics. Her pink sash, you probably can't even see it. Let me just lift the belt up there. She has the X-Men logo done there on the side, and the purple, the metallic blue I should say, on the sleevelets here, as well as the little bands. The thing about the bands though is, while this up at the top here is of course a little bit darker of a skin tone for Psylocke, here though it's a little bit darker still in between the bands. It looks like they probably have painted over top of a darker plastic, resulting in what looks almost to be an unfinished, maybe a second coat of paint could have helped a little bit just to make this the same color as this. As we move further down her legs, she kind of has the same problem here in the bands of her thighs, where paint here for the flesh tone kind of overlaps and unfortunately is a little on the messier side, but still the metallic blue looks so good on this figure. There's the back of the figure right there. I like also that they've given her the long sash as opposed to this smaller one. Again, just something that I find Diamond Select are good for doing. When it comes to Marvel Select figures, singing the praises I'm sure I may be sounding like I'm doing, but you know, again, you get unique molds, and I think things like this would certainly be cheapened, I think, on a Marvel Legends version of Psylocke. There's the flowing hair there on the back. Just really liking the hairstyle. I think what they've probably done in both cases is that they took black plastic and then they've just only dry brushed the edges to give it that real depth look of her hair, where the hairs inside, or more recessed hairs, are a little bit darker, and the hairs further out in the foreground are that lighter violet color. Again, it works really, really well, and on this particular head sculpt, looks exceptionally good on this particular figure. Let's have a look at her articulation now. Now, her head rotates all the way around. As you could probably guess it, though, as you are rotating her head, her longer hair will, of course, abruptly hit stuff like shoulders, for example. So you may just have to kind of lean it around, pry it around until you can get the head back to the way that you wanted it. The upper torso is up on a ball joint. Again, I'm really kind of considering just outright cutting the belt off. I appreciate the fact that Diamond Select would add something like this to make it canon to the comics, but still, I think they should have at least made something accessible where you could detach this, even if they had like a little loop and a tab. Just something as simple as that could allow you to take the belt off, which I'm probably going to just outright do. Shoulders hinge outward to about there. I guess about a 45-degree angle, and they also rotate all the way around. She has a swivel at the top band where that attaches to the shoulder. It's a nice way that they've concealed the hinge joint, little swivel joint I should say, of the bicep. She has a double hinge on the elbow, so if you do have her, for example, with the katana sheath on the back, you actually can make it look as if, as I did at the beginning of this review, where she's actually pulling out the katana from the sheath. And like I said, this is a double hinged elbow. This one I was able to relax just a little bit more. You can see how far back that double hinged elbow affords the arm. As for her wrists, let's just get everything back the way it was. Her wrists, she does have a swivel all the way around. It hinges back and forth. We've already looked at the torso up here, but she does also have a dumbbell ball joint. And I always say it's a dumbbell ball joint because you can see it's a mirror copy to itself. A larger ball joint here and a larger ball joint on the other side. Kind of looks like a dumbbell. This rotates forward. This rotates back. She has quite a considerable afforded, posability, a luxury, just because she does have that ball joint working in there. So I really like that. Swivel at the top, cut of the thigh. It's about a half cut thigh cut right there. And then she also has a double hinge on the knee. And she also has articulation in the foot with a quite generous amount of ankle articulation as well. Oh, in case you were also wondering, she does have peg holes on the undersides of her feet, even though technically the figure's display stand didn't have a peg on it for her feet. You could certainly most definitely use one of the many different various figure display stands. Being that this is a standard sized peg hole, you could use any various different company display stands with the peg if you want to get Psylocke here in a little bit more of a dynamic pose. Tossing the idea back and forth of whether I wanted to actually keep the yellow on Psylocke ultimately resulted in my decision to keep her in a more classic look. To be fair, I know that they took that from one of the designs from the comics in which Psylocke was legitimately wearing a yellow belt and a yellow sheath for her katana. But for me, this is the more classic look myself. I prefer to have her without the belt and without the sheath, so I just ultimately took them off. I did take the sheath off the way I showed you in the review. I tossed around the idea of actually heating up the torso as I suggested, but I didn't really want to run the risk of loosening up the ball sockets for her torso. The last thing you really want is to have anything loose on the figure, especially if you were the one that caused it. So instead, I bit the bullet and I instead cut the belt cut the little belt itself. I just kind of cut a line through it and removed it quite easily. The belt technically still fits around her waist. I haven't really done any considerable damage to it. Being the shape of its circular shape anyways, it's only going to really drape around her waist. And if it sits a little lower, it really sat on her waist a little lower anyways. It's not like it's going to fall down her legs. So for what it is, I'm happy that I've actually been able to not so much customize it, but I've been able to get the look of Psylocke to be something a little bit more iconic and something I'm more familiar with. I like this look myself. I appreciate the fact that they would have given you all the extra yellow because, again, it's true to the comics. But for me, this is the look I want to go with instead. Psylocke has been one of my all-time favorite female X-Men figures. I think she was actually one of the X-Men Blue team, if memory serves me correctly. This was during the heyday in which I was collecting X-Men comics. Everything that was coming out X-Men, I was picking it up. And it certainly helped a lot that Jim Lee was doing the drawing back then. Psylocke, I sort of think more than anything else, I kind of pair her with Jim Lee. As soon as I think Psylocke, I immediately think back to Jim Lee drawing her in the comics, and maybe that's why I like her so much. She just has such a unique look to her, and of course she's got some really cool powers too with the psychic blades. This is a great representation of Psylocke, a much better representation, if you ask me, than what we were getting from the Marvel Legends, and probably one of the reasonings why I jumped so quickly to grab this one, and not so quickly to get the Marvel Legends version of Psylocke. If you manage to pick up this figure for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you think of the new released Psylocke from the folks over at Diamond Select. Some good news, by the way. If you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, it should be available now in comic book stores. And might I also just say, I don't know if it's just because of the tariff codes, but I did notice that Psylocke and all the Marvel Select figures went from $34.99 to what I'm used to paying to a whopping $43.99. Ouchie wawa. That's actually what I ended up paying for this figure, $43.99. I hope things can kind of settle off where we can hopefully go back to the way original pricing of figures used to be. Canada alone, I mean, we already pay through the roof when it comes to a lot of these collectibles. The idea of paying even more for it can be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Either way, though, let me know what you guys think of the new Psylocke release down below in the comment section if you managed to pick up this one for yourself. Even let me know, did you keep the yellow katana sheath on her and the belt, or did you remove them like I did? Personally, I like it without, but there might be some people that actually enjoy it with it on her instead. Always like reading your comments down below. And speaking of down below, If you are new to this channel or a long-time viewer, maybe let's just say you never got around to hitting that subscribe button, make today be the day of personal change. Hit that subscribe button down below and make sure you swing on over next door to turn on that bell notification so in future videos, maybe future Marvel Select reviews will be coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.